Hello, I am Vishal Prabhukhanolkar. Let us talk about importance of transportation in supply chain management. Transportation, as we all know, is the process of taking goods from one place to another. Inside supply chain management, it becomes all the more important because all the goods are being transferred from production to warehouses, to distributors, to retailers. How we manage that decides the overall costing of the supply chain. For example, we may think that if a total truck has to be sent, one truck has to be sent, we have to fill it to the fullest capacity so that we utilize the transport cost to the highest. That means our transport cost per unit will be the least when our truck is full. But at the same time, we need to realize that if a full truck goes to the inventory holding cost increases by that much. So now we have decreased the transport cost but increased the inventory cost. So transporting decision or transport related decision has to be taken in view of the entire system. Transportation decision also depends on what kind of strategy we are using in our supply chain. There are three kinds of strategies. One, push strategy. For example, we produce a certain kind of product. Irrespective of whether there is a demand or not, depending on previous demands, we forecast the demand for this quarter or this month or this week and then push the products into the system. So transportation is needed from production side down towards retailer based on the push that is coming from the manufacturer. On the other hand, there is another style which is called pull. For example, a retailer needs more products. So retailer places a demand with the distributor who in turn places the demand with the manufacturer. Now the products are being pulled and the transportation system is being used depending on the demand generated from the retailer side, which is the other end of the spectrum. And that is how pull strategy works. In reality, most of the times we find that there is a third strategy which is also at work, which is called push-pull. Some part of the demand is being pushed from the manufacturer side depending on the previous forecasts that we have made. Some demand is being pulled from the retailer because of the lack of material available at the retailer. So push-pull strategy is also seen in the supply chain. So now depending on whether you are using push strategy or pull strategy or push-pull strategy, your transportation strategy changes. Total cost of supply chain also depends on who owns the transportation facility. For example, we might decide to own the entire transportation as part of the supply chain. That means the cost of vehicles as well as cost of its maintenance and the salaries of the drivers, etc. is completely owned by us, as in owned by the supply chain owner. So the total cost of supply chain goes high, but at the same time it gives us high amount of reliability. On the other hand, some of it can be outsourced. Then the reliability may go down, but cost will surely go down. So there is a trade-off between reliability and the cost which needs to be considered while taking a transportation related decision. Now when we are talking about ownership of transportation, there are three types of ownership. Ownership of the assets, that is ownership of the trucks or delivery vans or the corresponding material. Other is ownership of the service. So who owns the service of transportation? That person need not own the vehicles but can own the service of the transportation. And the third is ownership of the driving service. So the driving can be outsourced to a third party completely who has got nothing to do with the maintenance or ownership of the vehicles or maintenance or ownership of the transportation service as such, but they will only provide drivers. So depending on the criticality of each of these factors, transportation strategy also must decide which of these parts we must own. And one last consideration that we need to make while designing a transportation strategy is which of the transport routes are we going to follow? Is it air, is it sea, or is it road? If it is air, it is going to be very costly, but at the same time the time of delivery is going to be very low. If it is sea, the amount of transport that we can do is going to be very high, but the time of shipment will be low. Other aspect of delivery would be land-based delivery, either train or road. So similar kind of considerations will come in when we decide the mode of transport. So that is another factor which decides the total number of cost and amount of time it takes to delivery. So when we are considering ownership of the transportation, we are taking a trade-off between reliability and the cost of total supply chain management. And when we are taking mode of transport, then we are doing a trade-off between the time it takes to deliver and the cost of supply chain management.